There we go. We're recording.
Okay.
Okay, so Dave, if you think back to kind of the last 10 years or even present day, we're wondering about what would you say kind of the top 3 barriers are that are hindering the market for ground source heat pumps in Canada?
I think probably the number one thing in urban atmosphere, which is the price of natural gas and and in Ontario anyway, the very high cost of electricity. Now in the urban market or the rural markets, oil, propane, that's been kind of stable for a little while, and electricity prices are fairly high. So that you don't get the amount of savings you used to get to be able to attract customers with operating costs like you used to be able to without any type of government involvement. Yeah, it's difficult. Well, especially when you have in rural areas, there's been quite a lot of publicity related to the subsidization and expansion of natural gas. Right. Well, that's we kind of fought that at the OEB, and I thought we'd they ruled in our favor, but favor changes when governments change. So there is really no support of any type for geothermal in Ontario for sure, and there might be a bit in Quebec, but otherwise I don't know if there's any kind of government utility programs to support the technology to be able to compete with heavily subsidized fossil fuels. You're fighting an uphill battle anyway because you're in a renewable energy technology, and then you have to battle with established technologies that are being subsidized. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So very difficult. So you can spend marketing dollars and advertising dollars and all the things you want in the rural markets, but it's become pretty hard to attract people when you don't have any kind of support. And we had support, but then when Ford came in, he killed it all. So that was a year-long project that we spent working on that to get it launched. And I think it was launched maybe 5 months.
And sorry, what program are you talking about?
That was the Green On program with the Ontario provincial government supporting geothermal, which was
so was an upfront incentive, or?
Yeah, it was $14,000.
Yeah.
And we spent a couple of years getting that, well, a year flat out, really working pretty flat out to get that to happen. It was launched, and then 5 months later, it was canceled. Well, that creates a bad taste all the way through the marketplace, even with the dealers and the suppliers and everybody. Just why would you ramp up when you're going to get the rug pulled out from under you?
Yeah, there's no certainty, long-term certainty.
No, and there never has been. We always thought there was. And the only real long-term certainty that's been there in North America anyway, and I would say anywhere, has been the US tax credits. And they even survived Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually they were reinstated under Trump.
Right.
Because they were pulled away I worked on that for a while with those guys. So in Canada, I don't know. I've been out of it for, actively where I needed to make a living off of it for about 10 years now. So, but I keep involved. So I have a bit of a harsh reality to it because I've been through the waves. Oh man.
Yeah.
Where you have, one day you have 45 employees, the next day you have seven.
Right.
It's just hard. So I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. I think policy is probably your biggest thing, but barriers, there's lots. One thing that helps cure it is some type of sustained involvement in designing policy that can withstand governmental change. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get the contractors to get too excited about it again.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's, I guess that's like sustained involvement from the perspective of financial support, like either through policies that change your operating costs. So policies that can, you know, increase the cost of fossil fuels or decrease the cost of electricity, or upfront purchase incentives. But I'm wondering, are there other kind of non-financial barriers in the market that are holding things back, like quality, for example? I know you worked on standards in the past. Like, do you see that as also being kind of a barrier, or
No,
okay?
we know how to do these. You know, we've got millions of them. So, you know, it's not a new game. They have to be put in properly with standards and good training. But and the longer you go without good programs, the longer the people that are in the business of doing installations have lost their people that did it.
Right.
And you have to keep starting over.
Start again. Yeah.
Right. You know, so, you know, policies like, you know, putting a significant price on carbon, significant for this half price utility rates, which we proved out. Those are things that don't get discussed much, but that's been something that's been a specialty on my part, is electric utilities that have geothermal go in, where they're up against things like gas, oil, and electric, or gas, oil, and propane, go from net profits of, this is 15 years ago, $150 to $200 a year, to $600 to $700 a year, because of all the kilowatt hours they're gaining. Usually they just get stuck with cooling.
Yeah.
And maybe drying your clothes and your lights and your computers, but they have to have the service in place. When you put geo in, your load factor on the utility goes up dramatically. So their usage of their infrastructure is much better without the peaks. So they get base load power that just is extremely profitable. But the customer doesn't benefit from making the utility a ton of dough.
This is excellent foreshadowing for what we're going to ask you about in the international policy section.
I get ahead of myself.
I'm really glad you're already thinking about that. Which I think we could probably almost move into, because I think, well, it sounds like, okay, there's first and foremost barrier, like the market. There's barriers within the market, financial barriers in the market, to the point where, you know, some involvement from government or utilities, like some support is needed. And when that support isn't continuous or kind of long term, you have all kinds of challenges with, you know, like I liked also the point you made about expertise. Like, if that expertise isn't in the market for a sustained period of time, you've got to go through this whole learning curve again each time. So it's this kind of,
I think it's an evaluation and evaluation of the technology's benefit to all of the different players. You know, Ontario Hydro, we had an incentive program where 7,000 systems went in 3 years in the early 90s, and the utility expensed it.
Right.
For we retrofitted an awful lot of electric heat, and what that did for them, it was, you know, $4,000 a kilowatt to build a new dam or put something up, and they showed us that we were saving 7 kilowatts. They could have given the systems away.
Right.
Really. They could have just given them to them, and they'd made more money, and they would have had all these watts back in their grid. So there's a lot of hidden attributes to the technology that don't get recognized, to develop policy to really value what it does. You know, and now carbon's come into the equation, which is fine. But there's a lot of other attributes of the technology that policy can be based on, that are strictly financial.
And so why, like, after they basically were, you know, footing the bill for all these systems because it just made sense for that. Like, why do you think they stopped doing that, or why did that not catch on in a bigger way?
Because Maurice Strong came in as the president and canceled it.
Okay.
I went in and met him, you know, and said, geez, Maurice, this is right up your alley. Yeah, but it's not my policy, so.
Because it's interesting because like you see a
Fine.
lot of jurisdictions talking about exactly that, but like even in New York or even in kind of leading places, we're not seeing that such a direct connection between that value and making investments in geothermal.
No, that needs to be valued. We've attempted to do it a number of times. I've got all kinds of spreadsheets and things that show the societal value of the technology and the amount of jobs it get generated putting trenches in the ground. Like I was raised as a well driller. That's where I came from. My whole life has been involved in this, doing things in the ground. And there's a lot of labor, and it's tech labor that's well paid, and it's local. So you got energy. There's energy everywhere, all over the place with geo. But you have to put the holes in the ground. Well, doesn't that employ a lot of people that are skilled? And they're local, and they don't have to be in Alberta. They don't have to leave Newfoundland for Alberta. They could work in Newfoundland for 20 years. So there's all these societal benefits, and right down to the taxation of those people that do the work. There's all these, then the carbon comes into it, and then the demand from the utilities comes into it. That's kind of what I specialize in now. That's what I'm in. I only work on what I'm interested in now. I've done enough of the bulldog work.
Yeah.
Employees in manufacturing and production hell is Moscow, all of that. So you kind of pick your things. Like Quebec, 600,000 electric heated homes. There's 6 kilowatts, maybe 10 kilowatts of peak demand right there. That's enough to run. You can run off one house, you can run 8 electric cars.
Yeah.
ADVs. Just by putting a loop in the ground.
And so like
the direct offset, sell the power to New York State at 18 cents instead of selling it to people in Quebec at 5.
Yeah.
But what it does is geo has all these attributes that don't ever get recognized. If you retrofitted 600,000 homes, that's like the dam, the biggest dam in Quebec. Getting it back. And at the same time, you're lowering people's operating costs by 3/4.
So why do you think that's not happening?
Because nobody's banging the drum. I got tired. That's all I did for 35 years. It's just day and night. It's just been, I lived in DC for 2 years, lived there to try to get things happening, but I don't see anybody. There's people now in New York State that are beating it pretty hard.
Yeah. And I mean, I think
it sounds like you guys are going to do some of that yourself. That's what you're looking at doing. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say exactly that. Like, this is industry and it's HRAI kind of bringing up this exact battle again, but like, we want to learn from you because we know you've seen this cycle already. So
no, I haven't just seen this cycle.
Yeah.
There's lots of scars. My wife says this morning, what are you going to go talk about? Same shit, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which like, we know this isn't reinvented. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but it's already been done. So like, how do we kind of take what you've learned and everything you've seen and think about like, okay, how do we move forward? Where do we go from here to make it effective?
I think you need to encapsulate the benefits. Encapsulate to whoever, pick somebody, a household. Well, there it is. It's renewable energy for the house, and you can get rid of your carbon, and it operates. It still operates for less than gas in the city. Our place does here. We've got holes in the driveway. That little tiny building lot. It's not that hard to do. It's but it has to be valued, and all of the attributes need to be valued economically and also societally and environmentally. And that hasn't been summed up.
Okay, ever. It's that kind of clear accounting that's missing.
totally. And they all interlink. They
Yeah.
cross over. They cross over to each other, you know, so excuse me. I think that's you know, policy can fall out of things like that if it's summarized. You know, the benefits are putting in a natural gas pipeline is way more expensive than putting in earth loops
Mm-hmm.
for those same houses, especially in the rural areas, because the energy is already in the yard. Why do you
Yeah.
want to pipe it from Pennsylvania? Why? Like, it's confused. I can't make any sense of it.
Yeah. That's, I
We're
guess,
going to
just
pipe it.
the
We're going
way
to
things have
import.
been done, right?
Yeah, we're going to import fracked gas from Pennsylvania that is worse than burning coal in your house.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the environmental footprint, when you consider the methane and the fracking and the rest of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's worse than burning coal.
Yeah.
And yet you don't want to use what's in the yard.
And so is it like, let's say they've got that accounting, like, let's say we've got it, like, here's all the benefits, like, who do you shop that around to utility? Like, is that like utilities and utility regulators? Like, are those the people
Yes,
that,
that's part of it. Sure. You know,
yeah.
the regulators that we dealt with Ontario Hydro wasn't very warm to doing anything. Their research department they were really good, but that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But we worked with the energy people his name was Wong, the minister in Ontario, and they just beat on him for 6 months. Every
Okay.
time you could just kept at him, and and then he finally did the math and figured it out and went, well, Ontario Hydro, you need to do this because they were regulated. That's where it came from. I don't think Hydro wanted to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was a 3.5-year program. It was supposed to be 7. The federal program that we had previously was $14,000. That was to be a 8-year program. It was 3 years. Well, you ramp up and build new buildings and employ a whole bunch of people and get it all really running and everything's ticking over and you're growing at 50-60% a year, and boom, rug's gone.
Mm.
The last time it was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this again. Just,
I like to think that every time you did that, we're getting a bit closer, and maybe now there'll be a
I think
critical
we're getting.
mass.
I think that's the only way you learn.
Yeah.
It's just when you're on the edge of it, it gets a bit.
It's a little demoralizing, right?
Well, that gets old.
Yeah. Well, based on everything you said, I don't think we'll show you the policies now that we're thinking of. I don't think anything there is going to be something you haven't already thought of, but we'd love to just talk through each of them with you and get your thoughts on effectiveness and who would need to be involved and that sort of thing. So Hannah's got actually a slide here. So let us know if you can see it.
Popped up on my other screen. Let's see what else. Okay, yeah.
So we can just talk through each of these, and then it'd be great if we could just get you as a first step to rank them, and then we can get into kind of more details around implementation for each of them. So the first being, building codes. So actually building, including in building codes for new buildings, or in some places we also saw existing building requirements to use renewable heating and cooling. And then also in some places they did actually have a peak demand requirement built into the code. So that's one piece. Another piece is having potentially, ground source heat pump ready new construction. So those are kind of the pieces we're thinking of from the building code standpoint. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, a requirement to use renewable heating and cooling is with maybe you can you expand it all on with a peak demand requirement?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's recognizing again, the demand benefits of ground source heat pumps and maybe trying to steer portion of the market towards ground source heat pump, either ground source heat pump or very efficient air source heat pump. So it's just kind of thinking about policies, because a lot of the policies that are going to help ground source heat pump are also helping air source heat pump. So kind of trying to think about both those things.
I understand.
Yeah.
Interesting. Peak demand requirement. That's very difficult with an air source heat pump in rural northern markets. That's I don't know how you do that, but okay. That's GSHP ready construction. That's pretty simple. Yeah, you can do that. It's not that difficult.
Okay.
That's easy to do. It should be done. It makes sense. Yeah.
And maybe, so for the first one, like maybe it is just a requirement to use renewable heating and cooling. It's just always this tension of like, why would, there are reasons people would choose ground source heat pumps over air source heat pumps, but yeah, thinking about kind of the market balance between those two.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next one, emission pricing. Of course, you know, this isn't specific to ground source heat pumps, but anything you can do to kind of make fossil fuels more expensive, basically, which is going to have that impact of driving the market towards electric. So I think that one's probably pretty straightforward. And then here's one you should be excited about, given your drilling background or have some thoughts about. So drilling, any kind of changes to drilling regulation, like whether you have, whether there's kind of options to streamline permitting or, you know, if there needs to be changes to groundwater protection or, you know, anything kind of in that realm.
I think that has to be reviewed and see what it is. I don't even know what it is at this point. I'm not sure. I know that there was something with one project where they had a gas problem. But I've had an awful lot of gas problems drilling holes in the ground and had nothing to do with ground source heat pumps, you know, but they ended up really focusing on that.
And this kind of comes out of, we talked to a couple, well, we talked to a few jurisdictions in Europe, and Sweden turns out has it's very easy to drill there. There's not a lot of regulation, in contrast to a place like Germany where it's really tough. There's been a lot of kind of advocacy to protect groundwater, which has kind of negatively impacted the ground source heat pump market by just making it more difficult to drill, basically more expensive, more permitting required. So this is kind of getting at trying to figure out where Canada is on that spectrum, if permitting is an issue for drilling, or maybe it's not.
Well, permitting, I think too, is, you know, well, in a startup situation, it's different, but in a longer term, most of that can be handled with standards, making sure that the people are putting them in properly.
Right. You
don't really need much regulation or expensive regulation once you're using people that are licensed to do the job. It's like a gas fitter. You know, a natural gas fitter puts a pressurized gas into your house and then ignites it. So, you know, it's just because it's accepted. It's we don't have gas at all. It scares the hell out of me because it just seems kind of silly. But there's regulations that work around that. And mostly I don't even know if I don't think every job gets inspected anymore. The people do the work, you know, and they do it the way they should do it, and won't have many problems.
So it probably won't be an issue if there's kind of trust that the industry knows what they're doing, and there's some.
Yeah, that's a catch-22 though too. Like it's the cart and horse thing. It's just if you don't have enough business, you don't need the standards and regulation. So it's really difficult. You know, geo is a strange animal. It's you know, if you're going to put gas in your house, somebody shows up and puts a furnace in, and then the gas guys bring the gas in. It's just an accepted process, and it's two completely separate worlds. With geo, you're getting the energy, and we're in the energy business, not in the heat pump business.
Right.
Well, nobody else does that. They put solar on the roof, it's fine, but And I like solar, but it doesn't heat your house or cool it or give you domestic hot water. Might give you a little bit, but geo will give you all of it. So it's a very difficult business, but you got to build the business before you need the regulation.
I guess we would wonder, like, the reason we're kind of thinking about this is, like, as we're, like, again, in that context of barriers, what's holding back the market? Like, is this an issue? Like, is permitting holding people back right now?
No.
It sounds like not really.
They're drilling 850-foot holes in downtown Toronto. Lots of them, all over in Toronto. Don't know what the permitting there, but in rural Ontario, there's not very many vertical earth loops going in. Maybe there needs to be regulations or something there, but at this point, with no types of support, high electric costs, and fairly low fossil fuel costs, there's not any people putting in verticals. They might put a horizontal earth loop in a new home. There's not a lot of retrofits taking place, I don't think. If there's a $14,000 or $7,000 or $14,000 grant, yeah, you can market on that, and you're going to sell a lot of systems into rural Ontario, but they're mostly all horizontal earth loops.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and then you already mentioned, we already talked about the tax credit, but the next, obviously you're, very familiar with this, but this is, again, one of the kind of key policies we heard. So
who said that? Can I ask? Was that from New York State or
the US? Yeah, the New York. Yeah.
Was it Bill Nowak you were talking to?
No, it wasn't, but I have talked to Bill Nowak before, for a couple of years ago for another project.
Or Bob Wyman?
This was actually someone from NYSERDA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple other people you should talk to.
Yeah.
I like NYSERDA, but they have their one opinion of things. So the tax credits were really came from leveling the playing field with solar and wind and fuel cells and biomass. We went in, Dan Ellis was the guy that did it. They spent $2 million, and he lived in Washington for a year. And he was the president of a manufacturing company at the same time. Like, and I helped him put together all the presentations, but it was based on directly on the tax credits that were already in place for solar, wind, and biomass and fuel cells. So what you did then is you're basically coming in under an existing umbrella.
Okay.
Which you always want to look for, because that's where you get your leverage when you're just small guys.
Yeah.
You want to hook onto the coattails of the wind and solar guys, because they're the ones with all the money. And they spend all the time in Washington doing all the lobbying. And I did some of that when I lived in DC too. We raised $100 million with DOE to get that done. But the tax credits, the only thing about tax credits that I don't like is it's mostly for the rich. You got to make enough money to have a tax write-off. And a lot of the problem is a lot of the people that need geo in rural areas don't make enough money to get enough tax credit for them to put it in to save money and energy. That's kind of sticks a bit,
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe I shouldn't care so much, but yeah, it sticks a bit. So yeah, tax credits are great, and the thing is, they seem to stick, which they've had them for 12 years in the States.
If you want to talk about longevity.
The only thing is that the tax credits have been there, but the industry hasn't grown. They're riding on it. And I give them a lot of hard time about it too. Because I know a lot of guys that said, man, you're just riding the coattails of the game. You should be using all of that money. You should be using all of that tax credit money or the percentage that's your excessive profit and using it to build the market.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah. It's interesting. You have to somehow build demand at the consumer end that makes industry put these things out somehow. Because the industry it's so fragmented. You've got energy side and you've got mechanical side. It's different. It's not like other energy resources. There's no other on-demand at point of use renewable energy resource to heat and cool and supply hot water in your house. No such thing. But it's a difficult thing. So that, where your policy comes in is how do you make some type of a draw policy built to build the draw in the industry so that it has to address the market.
That's a good segue to our next one, the incentives. So if you have in the market, of course, one-time incentive, but maybe even some kind of ongoing incentive for recognition of exactly what we've been talking about, one of the things we've been talking about, which is the peak demand benefits. So, whether you can build that, get permission from the regulator to offer that.
Yeah. I think we get a little hung up on that a bit. Just the peak demand aspects of it. That was what was targeted throughout the National Electric Cooperative Association and Edison Electric Institute and Hydro and Manitoba Hydro and all the rest. It was really because that was another thing you could piggyback off of, because they had a peak demand initiative in the place, and you could go in and see where Geo fit, because it's kind of a chameleon. You can fit it over here, you can fit it over there. You can plug it into different policy development, but the real peak demand is, we're going to have to deal with it. Especially if we're going to put in air source heat pumps. That's a really big issue, because when they flip over, man, there's a lot of electricity has to go in there for a very short period of time that the utility has to have a huge grid available for just once in a while. And to subsidize that, to have that happen, is really dumb. That's just going to come back and bite you. And I've seen it before, and I like air source heat pumps, but I know an awful lot about refrigeration and heat pumps. I've built them. And it's really hard when it gets cold out, because the house heat loss goes up and the capacity goes down.
Yeah.
They're great where you don't need heat, and they're great where you don't need cooling.
So I guess that's exactly the,
Sorry.
That's kind of exactly where that building policy or building code thinking was from, right? Exactly that.
Yeah, that's, but the thing that really irks me is I have Waterloo North Hydro over here, and they were a partner in a project. We were doing financed earth loops, financed installations. Utility, our partnership company owned the systems. It was funded, paid on the monthly on the electric bill. I think we put in 200 or 300. Then I got really sick and I couldn't keep doing it. I just got really sick. So I got better, but it was too late. But that really flushed out a lot of the economic benefits to the utility, which I didn't know, because I got to work with the CFO. Right. And when you go from having a meter on a wall, like I'm a business guy, all of a sudden I can have a meter on a wall, I can put something in, and I can quadruple my net profit. Net, not gross, net profit, by putting something in that pretty much pays for itself anyway. Well, why wouldn't you just give somebody a half price utility rate, make damn sure they put them in, or give them away like they do power lines and water lines and sewer lines and transformers and roads and infrastructure. Geo, I think if you guys are, really, it has to be looked at as an infrastructure game. It's an energy infrastructure that just happens to be available everywhere and nobody wants to use it. it still twists me up, and I've been at it forever. Still just causes like, what the? You know?
Well,
So really, to
yeah.
value the technology is absolutely critical. How does the utility, like I've gone through this with Manitoba Hydro and Ontario, or Manitoba Hydro, BC, and Hydro Quebec. They can power every car in Canada without ever building more grid by putting in geo. Forever. Where's that value?
Yeah.
What's that worth?
I guess like we're just trying to understand, like, because I agree with you and I see what you're saying. So like, is it just political will? Is it just
No, it's no
attention?
one has built something as a reference document to show it to them that's indisputable.
Right.
Okay, it's one house. Take one house. It uses 40,000 kilowatt hours a year. Now it's going to use 10,000 kilowatt hours a year. Well, gee, magically, you've got 30,000 kilowatt hours left over.
Okay, so it's just laying out the math, like it's just laying out the numbers in
but it's simple,
proven way.
So 4 kilometers per kilowatt hour is what a Model 3 Tesla uses. That's 120,000 kilometers just by putting a loop in the ground. And you don't have to build a new dam.
Right.
And you can sell the excess power to somebody else at a higher price. We don't have an energy problem. We have an imagination problem. Really
the very last example, like the last example for utility, you already touched on it, but we thought about, okay, let's pretend we're in a world where this value is being recognized. Like, is it feasible to have some kind of rate specific to ground source heat pumps?
That, or you value the technology properly and you just get an earth loop for nothing, just so you use it.
Right.
Just here, take it. I just want to make more money. And I want to cut emissions. And I want to power the EVs. And I don't want to import gas. Well, pipe those watts into Alberta, or pipe those watts into Ontario. If at 20 cents a kilowatt hour compared to 6 cents in Quebec. Quebec probably get rid of their debt. And they're using loops to do it. This is all real. This isn't.
No, I know.
It sounds like bullshit, but it's not.
I know.
It really does.
I know you've probably had these conversations so many times over the years. So I can imagine it must be frustrating to still be having the same.
It's not frustrating.
Making the same points.
It's not really frustrating anymore, but it'd be really nice if somebody would pick up that banner and try to do the math and lay out what the real benefits are. Because when you start piling them all up, taxation, revenue, peak demand avoidance, base load increase, employment, like.
Yeah. So I guess like what we're really trying to get at is like, let's say we know those benefits. We've convinced people that those benefits exist. Like, what tools do you then use to increase ground source heat pumps in the market, right? What are the...
Well, so if you build the case and you cover off all these bases and you go talk to the federal government and say, look, here's the math. I can show it to you on 5 slides. Right? You have an energy resource that's available everywhere in Canada on demand at point of use, and here are the benefits. Now, what policy do we develop so that we make sure this happens? Well, you do it the same way you put in sewers and water lines and power lines. You have a new energy resource that's available at point of use on demand forever, that has no carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Keeps you warm, keeps you cool, gives you hot water, can offset. You can run it on solar if you wanted to, and batteries. So here it is. So if you want to get to a net zero future, right? If you want to get there, you might as well use something that's really going to pay you a lot of money. So build policy so that we can make this happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're kind of in a world where, let's say we can make that case, like we need to roll out some policies. And so if we're looking at these 5 policies, like which are really going to be effective once that business case is made, once the value case is made?
I really think that if you want to go all the way down the pipe to where I'm at from all this time and all of the different experience, earth loops should be put in the same way as any other public resource.
Right.
There should be no capital cost to the consumer at all, nothing.
So
if you want to charge them a little bit a month, fine, charge them 2% interest or something, or whatever you got to do to make yourself feel better, but you don't really need to. You should be able to call up on the phone and say, I want a loop.
Yeah.
Somebody should figure it out and come in and put it in. And then somebody else comes in, just like a normal heating contractor. Now he doesn't want to, they hate earth loops because they don't do that. They hook up to your oil tank. They hook up to your propane tank. They hook up to your gas tank. They'll hook up to your geo tank or your geo pipe. So that's how you build.
Is that that to me kind of says it's about utility, like having the regulator tell utilities to build out this infrastructure. So would you say like kind of utility regulation is that the most
utility
effective
regulation
way to get there?
Or somebody new steps up to the plate because it doesn't need the utility.
Market.
It doesn't need the utility. The utility's already in the yard. The energy's already there. The electric utility just gets to supply a little bit of power like it does for your air conditioner or for your fan or for your lights or whatever else. But the lion's share of the energy is going to come from the property. About 70% of your total energy requirements will come from that loop.
Yeah.
Well, I don't get it.
Well, is there, so I guess like if we bring it back, like I just want to kind of bring it back to these different policies that we're looking at specifically here.
Yep.
Like, is there anything here that you think would not be effective?
Rates and tariffs are really good. You know what? All of these things can work. Any one of them on its own is short term, unless it's going to be carbon tax or something like that. But anything that can be pulled back by a change in policy or government, you got to really be careful. So you got to analyze those to know which ones could we kind of make that are carved out in stone. Now the tax credits, I can't believe that they got them back. Now I met with the president and CEO of NIBA, who owns all of the manufacturing. They own Water Furnace, my old company, Climate Master, Enertech. They bought them all. They're a Swedish company. So I called him up and I said, you know what? These guys need $500,000 right now. Otherwise, they're not going to get the lobbying done in Washington, and you're going to lose it. You're going to lose these tax credits. So he wrote a check for $500,000. They got it done, but they did get it done in a Trump administration. So there must be something magic about tax credits, or it's just an anomaly, one or the other.
So I guess tax credits, emissions pricing, like these are kind of the ones that have more longevity, and also building codes potentially. Like if you can get a renewable heating and cooling requirement in a building code.
But why are you doing
that? So that you don't have new buildings with the old built-in infrastructure.
What's the economic benefit of it?
I guess part of the reason you're interfering in the market is because there's a mismatch in the value and the externalities of the existing systems, right? Like You're
You
wanting
have to value that down to,
yeah.
somebody has to sum this up. Because if you do sum it all up, I've got spreadsheets on it, but they're very complicated. I'm probably the only one who understands them. It shows all the net benefit of installing geothermal in Manitoba.
Right.
The returns are staggering with employment, income, because it's all new people. It's a new industry.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna what we're gonna do out of these interviews, like we're going to basically, like, I think everything you've said about showing the value is definitely the first step, and is going to be the selling point for any of these policies. But now our next step, like our task, is to look at these policies and say, you know, which do we think are really going to be effective here, and what's going to be involved in putting them in place, who's going to be involved,
Right.
you know, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're trying to go. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's hard. It's a hard one. You got a good job here. Serious. This is a good one.
But what I'm hearing from you is like it's some combination of these policies. Like there's no kind of silver bullet here.
No, I think there can be a monetary value,
mm-hmm.
societal monetary value attached to each one, you know, and handicap them so that you know what's what, you know, rank them, figure out which ones are the most cost effective. And plus, by doing that, the exercise will give you an awful lot of knowledge. And really what it comes down to is we're going to have to economically fit things together to get to a net carbon future sooner or later. You know, you just can't keep throwing money at the wall. It's got to come out with what's the benefit here. I think maybe not. I don't know anymore. I'm very, COVID has completely tangled my mind up. I'm completely
You're not bizarre. The only one. You're not the only one.
It's just so amazing. Well, I kind of enjoy it in my bent sense because it just makes you think so differently. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. But so yeah. So is there a demand? Is there a demand at the federal government level or provincial government or utility level to know this kind of thing, or is this?
Well, this is something HRI wants to be able to shop around, is my understanding.
Okay.
So they want to know, you know, which of these policies, like who do we need to talk to, and what's going to be effective. So, like, if we had to look at these policies and rank them, which is the best place to start? Which one's going to have the biggest impact on the market?
Immediate impact? Is there follow-up on the other ones?
Well, I mean, you could take it however you want. Yeah, we can look at kind of short term, and maybe it's a combination of like, this is going to help in the short term, and then you move into that. Yeah, I'm open to hearing from you.
When we were putting together the climate change action plan thing that Murray and Kathleen Wynne and that bunch were putting together for the grant process for the last thing that happened, we really wanted, my team that had a lot of experience in renewables and what worked and what didn't work, really wanted to see a half price utility rate. Because it's really hard for a government to increase utility rates.
Right. So it's got that kind of longevity.
It's got teeth.
Yeah.
You know, and the half price rate worked out because they're going to sell that many more kilowatt hours. They're going to make money anyway, make more money anyway. They're going to fill their valleys, shave their peaks, do all that magic, supply cooling and all that stuff. But the half price rate is a big deal, especially in Ontario.
Do you think it's feasible to, like, it would be, what's your thinking on the feasibility of getting that in place?
It all depends on whether the problem you have in Ontario is the Ford government. That's your feasibility issue. But you know what? I think there's a way to get that done. It just takes time and money. But you you know, you got to spend time educating them that all these rural customers you have that have electric heat, you can retrofit all their homes and give them a half price rate, and Geo is going to cost them, compared to what they have, be a 1/5 the operating cost of heating with oil, propane, or electric heat.
Especially if we can have a carbon tax combined, right?
And a carbon tax. If you have all of that compiled, it may be something really difficult for somebody to pull. Yeah, I think that's probably your most powerful thing.
Okay.
The requirement for renewable heating and cooling is good, but I remember when we tried, you know, I remember when Kathleen Wynne came out and said, well, you know, we're going to stop using gas in new homes. Geez, I think she lost the election over that.
Yeah.
It was just,
it is, you do see it in Europe, like it's happening in other places. And I know it's a different context, but
backlash was just incredible. You know, GSHP ready construction, that's a good thing to have because it gives people some awareness. And all it really is a couple of pipes going into the basement.
Right.
Right. That you clean out to put the pipes in. That's it. Simple.
But it gets people thinking about it and talking about it.
Yep. Gets the builders whining about something.
Exactly.
No, I think the stuff you've laid out here is really good. It's just figuring out what can stick.
Yeah. And so can you, like, I know we only have a few more minutes with you. I just want to circle back to the tax credit. So I hear what you're saying about the kind of equity concerns. Do you have any other thoughts on tax credit and like, is that something you'd like to see in the Canadian market, or are there other ways?
You know, I like it because I'm a rich guy.
You've already got your system, so you're fine.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? You know, it's great for me because, you know, getting $7,500 or a 30% tax credit. That's, you know, that's what it is in the States on a $30,000 system. Is somebody that gets $9,000 back that doesn't really need it.
So it feels like you're just
that's
getting
the only thing I don't like about it. You're only helping out you're helping out the people that don't need any help. Right. That's the only part of it. So how you could figure that out so that, I don't know how you do it. Yeah. And so it's like not really, it's almost like something that might look like it was growing the market, but really it was just getting at a very small portion of the market who in the end probably didn't really need that support anyway. I know of projects, and I know of a number of projects where the mechanical system cost was $250,000 in the States. $250,000, you know, just for the mechanical. And the people got $70,000 in tax credits while they're building a $6 million home. That doesn't. And then it sounds like it's taken all that money away from all those people that need to save money. Yeah, it's taking it right out of the society. Yeah, I just it irritates me. And that's what, we want to avoid having those kind of perverse incentives, right? Or those. I've been poor. I know what it's like. Right. Yeah, I've been there a few times, so I know what it's like, and it's hard, especially when someone else is getting a shitload of money for nothing. It doesn't make sense to me. But you know what? Maybe it can be conjured in a way that is based on your income. Yeah. Yeah. Right? I don't know how you do that. I'm not enough of a policy wonk to know that, but it should be something that's got to do with, like, if you need to have a geothermal unit, you should be able to have one. Because your operating costs are so high. You should be able to figure that out so that you know, people that need them can have them, you know. So maybe just in the last minute, like, are we missing something big here? Like, is there a policy that we haven't talked about that you'd like to see? I think we need to go away from this and think about it before that. I don't know if I'm gonna, if you want to talk again, I'm up for it if I can think of it, you know. But well,
Well, maybe we'll, if you don't mind, maybe we could follow up by email and just
You can follow up
clarify.
anytime. I'm a
Yeah.
retired guy.
Okay.
I got time. And right now, I'm really not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You've got time and you've been through it. So, I mean, we want to learn from you as much as possible and make
No,
sure
this needs
we're,
to happen. I'd like to see it happen before I'm in the
yeah,
ground,
yeah.
not just the loops. So yeah.